Hayes didn't go home after finding the cassette. He drove straight to the station through falling snow, the tape on the passenger seat reflecting the dim dashboard lights. It felt like a living thing, warm with meaning, cold with threat. The closer he looked at it, the more the neat handwriting mapped onto everything he knew. This wasn't the work of a stranger. It was the looping signature of someone who practiced control as a craft. A person who believed they could guide destiny through careful planning. He sat alone in the briefing room, the clock on the wall ticking past 3:40 a.m. As the millennium approached, most of the world worried about computer systems failing. Hayes worried about something older and more primal human obsession. He placed the cassette into an old evidence room player. The machine clicked, whirring softly as magnets caught the tape. He pressed play, static at first. A faint rustle, the hum of someone adjusting a microphone. Then a voice, young, male, but strangely familiar, emerged in a whisper. "I told you, Amber, I told you I'd always be with you." Hayes felt his breath stop. The voice on the tape wasn't disguised. It wasn't distorted. It carried the low hum and rhythm of someone who lived within Ashford Creek's daily life. Someone who spoke with the confidence of belonging. The whisper continued. "You said you wanted space. You said you needed time away from me. But I knew what that really meant. Someone else was getting inside your head. Someone else was trying to take you away." A soft thud. A quiet sob. Amber's voice. Weak. "Afraid. Please let me go." The plea shook Hayes so deeply he had to close his eyes. The boy answered gently, almost lovingly. "You don't understand. I can't." Static filled the room until Hayes pressed stop with a trembling hand. He leaned back, staring at the stained ceiling tiles as though they might offer a way out. The suspect was no longer a shadow. He was a voice, a presence, a reality. But it wasn't enough to arrest him, not yet. The tape would have to be authenticated. They'd need voice comparison, forensic analysis. And the boy had been careful, always. Deputy Ward entered quietly, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "You haven't gone home. Listen to this," Hayes said, pressing play again. She stood frozen as the tape spoke, as the whispering climbed into a crescendo of possessiveness. Her expression tightened. She cut the tape with a sharp gesture. "That's someone local," she said. "Someone you know." "I know," Hayes replied. "But I need to be sure." Ward hesitated. "Why do I feel like you already are?" He didn't respond. By sunrise the snow had slowed, but a gray haze covered the town. Lights flicked on in houses one by one, families preparing for pre-Christmas routines, unaware that a monster walked their streets. Hayes decided to revisit the last person on his suspect list, the one he had avoided until now. Someone who had woven themselves into the grieving community with ease. Someone always nearby, always offering help, always available. He drove to the house of Ethan Price, a 22-year-old volunteer firefighter and longtime friend of the Cordell family. Ethan had been the one to organize the search parties along Willow Creek. He had helped distribute flyers, comforted Denise, and spoken publicly on behalf of the town. And he matched the age range Amber hinted at. He matched the behavioral patterns in her notebook. He had a juvenile incident on record, a trespassing and boundary violation case sealed from public view. Hayes knocked on the door. Ethan opened it almost immediately, as though he'd been expecting company. His hair was unkempt, eyes puffy from lack of sleep. "Sheriff, it's early. Everything okay?" Hayes forced himself to keep calm. I have some follow-up questions about Amber. Ethan stepped back. Sure, anything. The living room was scattered with newspapers, volunteer forms, old VHS tapes, and the faint smell of coffee and wintergreen. A small photograph of Amber sat in a frame on the mantel, too prominently, too carefully placed. Hayes noticed Ethan's hands trembling slightly as he poured coffee. Not the tremble of cold, but anxiety. You were close to the Cordells, Hayes started. Ethan nodded. Known them all my life. Amber was like a sister to me. Sister? Hayes asked softly. Or something else? Ethan's jaw tightened. I don't like the implication. Hayes studied him. Ethan avoided eye contact a shift from his usual charismatic composure. He placed the mug on the table with a clink too loud for the quiet room. What were you doing on the night of November 22nd? Hayes asked, watching him closely. Ethan blinked. At the firehouse. I was on call. Anyone confirm that? Yeah, the whole crew. Hayes knew this part was likely true. Ethan had an alibi. But obsessive offenders didn't need to be present at the moment of disappearance. They influenced the descent long before the final act. He switched tactics. Did Amber ever confide in you? Ethan hesitated. Sometimes. Why? Did she ever mention someone troubling her? A flicker crossed Ethan's eyes. He masked it quickly. No. Hayes leaned forward. Are you sure? Ethan swallowed. His voice tightened. Amber didn't tell me everything. Hayes let the silence expand. Ethan grew restless, shifting in his seat. Finally, Hayes stood. Ethan, would you come by the station later? We need a voice sample. Routine procedure. Ethan's expression hardened. A voice sample for me? It's standard, Hayes lied. Ethan's throat bobbed as he swallowed. I'll think about it. Hayes nodded and left, but as he stepped onto the porch, a chill crawled up his spine. Ethan's answers were too prepared. His hesitation too sharp, his presence too close. Back at the station, Hayes placed the cassette into an evidence bag. Ward watched him. You think it's Ethan, she said. I think it could be, Hayes admitted. But not definitely? No. Then who else? Hayes stared at the photograph on his desk, the one from the locket, showing Amber beside the unknown girl. Behind them, barely noticeable, was a blurred figure in the background. Hayes had overlooked it before, but now, on closer inspection, he saw it. The slant of the shoulders, the tilt of the head. Something about it reminded him of someone else entirely. He grabbed the original photo and magnified it with the lab scanner. The blurred figure sharpened slightly enough to make out a hairstyle, a jacket. His heart sank. This wasn't Ethan, not even close. This was someone younger, someone who had been hovering around the investigation quietly, innocently, never a suspect. Someone who had struck Hayes as overly helpful. A teenager who had volunteered to distribute flyers at the high school. Someone who had stepped into the edges of the Cordell family's life without being noticed. Ryan Caswell, a 17-year-old from Amber's school. A shy kid, awkward, withdrawn, always offering to help, but rarely speaking unless spoken to. Hayes felt sick. He had dismissed the boy as harmless. Maybe that was exactly why Amber hadn't named him. She didn't think anyone would believe her. He pulled Ryan's file. Minimal infractions, mostly good grades. But as Hayes read further, patterns emerged. A guidance counselor's note about unhealthy emotional dependency. A teacher's comment about overly attentive behavior toward certain classmates. A vague reference to boundary issues with a girl the year before. And then it hit him. The handwriting on the note. The handwriting on the Polaroid. The handwriting and the sealed incident record from 2 years earlier. It all matched. Hayes slammed the file shut, adrenaline surging. Ryan wasn't just nearby during the investigation. He was everywhere, every scene, every community effort, every moment of public grief. The signature of someone who wanted to remain part of the story. Hayes grabbed his coat. "Ward, we're going to Ryan Caswell's house. Now." As they rushed out of the station, snow blowing across the windshield, Hayes felt a dread he hadn't allowed himself to feel since the first day Amber went missing. Because if Ryan had been this careful, this devoted, this emotionally volatile, then Amber's final days had been far more terrifying than he ever imagined. And he feared they were already too late. The Caswell house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, a modest single-story home with Christmas lights still in their box on the porch. It was just after 6 p.m., and the last of the daylight had faded, leaving the neighborhood washed in cold blue-gray shadows. A thin trail of smoke drifted from the chimney. Someone was home. Hayes and Deputy Ward approached the front door carefully. Hayes knocked once firm, controlled. Footsteps, slow, hesitant. The door opened. Ryan Caswell stood there, bundled in a sweatshirt, eyes wide with surprise. He looked younger than 17 in that moment, soft features, nervous posture, hands buried in his sleeves. "Sheriff," he said, blinking rapidly. "Is everything okay?" His tone was polite. Too polite. His expression open, his breathing shallow, and his gaze flicked subtly, almost imperceptibly, to Hayes's left coat pocket, where the cassette tape rested. Hayes noticed. Ward noticed. "We'd like to ask you a few more questions," Hayes said. "May we come in?" Ryan hesitated only briefly before stepping back. "Sure." Inside, the house was warm and cluttered. A TV murmured softly in the background, some late 90s sitcom laugh track echoing faintly. Ryan's mother, exhausted from a double shift, had already gone to bed. The rest of the house felt untouched, lived in but not messy. Ryan gestured awkwardly toward the couch. "Sorry, it's not really clean. I wasn't expecting anyone." Hayes stayed standing. "Ryan, we've been reviewing everything from the case, going over every detail." Ryan nodded quickly, fidgeting. "Of course. I want to help however I can." Hayes studied him. His posture was tight, but not defensive, almost eager. That was what unnerved him most. "You spent a lot of time around the search parties," Hayes said. "More than most kids your age?" Ryan shrugged, eyes darting between Hayes and Ward. I felt bad for the Cordells. I wanted to help." Ward stepped closer. "Your teachers say you were close to Amber." Ryan swallowed. "We were friends." Hayes held up Amber's notebook. Ryan's gaze sharpened, a brief flash of alarm crossing his face before he smoothed it away. "You were more than friends," Hayes said quietly. Ryan's voice trembled. "I don't know what you mean." Hayes's tone remained calm, even gentle. "Amber wrote about someone new in her life, someone who made her feel watched." Ryan's jaw clenched. "She never said that to me." "She didn't have to," Hayes replied. "She wrote it." A long silence. Ryan's fingers tightened around his sleeves. A vein pulsed at his temple. Hayes stepped closer. Ryan, there's a cassette tape. Ryan froze, completely, every muscle locked. We found it at the bridge last night, Hayes continued. Your voice is on it. The air left the room. Ryan's face drained of color, and for a moment he looked like a child cornered in the dark. Then something shifted behind his eyes, something cold, calculating, practiced. I don't know anything about that, he whispered. Ward's voice was firmer. Ryan, we need you to come to the station with us. No, he said immediately, shaking his head. No, I didn't hurt her. I didn't. He backed up until he hit the side table, knocking over a framed photo of himself at age 14 with his mother. It shattered. The crash echoed through the living room. Hayes watched him carefully. Ryan, what happened between you and Amber? Ryan's breath hitched. She didn't understand. She thought I was trying to control her. But I wasn't. I just wanted to protect her. Protect her from what? Ryan's eyes filled with tears, real or not. Hayes couldn't tell. From everyone, from people who lied to her, from people who didn't see her the way I did. Ward whispered, Oh, God. Ryan continued, voice cracking. She was afraid. But she didn't know she didn't have to be. Not with me. Then why did she write that she didn't feel safe? Hayes asked softly. Ryan choked on a sob, then steadied himself. Because she didn't understand how much I loved her. The room went silent. A different kind of silence, thick, suffocating. Hayes felt the hairs on his arms rise. This was no misunderstanding. This was obsession blooming into delusion. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Ryan, did you take Amber to the bridge? Ryan didn't move, didn't blink. Then very softly he said, I didn't take her. Hayes felt a flicker of hope, until Ryan continued. She came to me. Ward inhaled sharply. Ryan, but Hayes raised his hand. Why, Ryan? Ryan looked up slowly, eyes glistening. She said she was tired. She said she didn't want to be scared anymore. She said she needed me. Hayes's pulse hammered. Then what happened? I told her I'd make everything quiet, Ryan whispered. I told her I'd make it all stop. Ward stepped forward to cuff him, but Ryan suddenly shoved the table, sending a lamp crashing, and darted toward the back door. Ryan, stop. Hayes shouted, lunging after him. Ryan slipped through the kitchen, knocking over chairs, sprinting through the snow-covered backyard. Hayes and Ward tore after him, boots sliding on ice. The cold night air stabbed Hayes's lungs as he ran. Ryan bounded over a low fence and disappeared into the darkness of the trees behind his house. Dispatch, this is Ward, she yelled into her radio. Suspect fleeing into the woods behind Elm Street. Request backup. Hayes kept running, branches whipping past him. Ryan's dark silhouette flashed between the trees thin, desperate, fast. They reached a clearing. Hayes skidded to a stop. Ward stopped beside him, breathing hard. Ryan stood at the edge of Willow Creek, the same bridge only a quarter-mile upstream. The water below was black, coated in thin sheets of ice. He turned slowly to face them, his breath fogging in the cold. And he smiled, a fragile, haunted smile. She wanted peace, he whispered. Ryan, Hayes said, voice breaking. Where is she? Ryan's eyes soft, almost tender. You'll find her, he promised. Just listen to the rest of the tape. What tape? Hayes demanded. Ryan's smile widened, almost serene. The second one. Ward's flashlight trembled in her hand. Ryan, don't do this. But Ryan took one step back, then another. Wood screamed, nitrogen monoxide, and Ryan vanished over the embankment, falling into the freezing darkness below. Hayes leapt forward, but Ward grabbed his arm. "Sheriff, you'll die if you go after him." The icy water churned violently. For a moment, Hayes saw Ryan's hand break the surface. Then it slipped beneath, swallowed by the black current. Snow fell silently around them. Ward's breath came fast and shaky. "Oh, God," she whispered. "What now?" Hayes stared at the water, fists clenched at his sides. Somewhere downstream, the boy he had failed to recognize as a predator was being carried away by the same river that had taken Amber. But Ryan's last words echoed in the cold night air. The second tape. Hayes felt his heart go cold. Ryan had left something behind, something deliberate, something final. He whispered into the wind, "What did you record, Ryan?" Cut to black. A low, resonant voice fills the silence, your channel's signature tone. Next time on TrueShadows Reel, the hidden tape surfaces, Ryan's final message is revealed, and Sheriff Hayes discovers the truth about what happened on the night Amber vanished. A truth more devastating than anyone imagined.